All right, everyone. Good morning. My name is Becky Lodolce, and I am a disaster service worker with the virtual outreach team of the COVID Command Center. I'm a principal analyst with the Adult Probation Department, where I develop departmental policy and oversee victim restitution outreach. I've had the pleasure of serving our community as a disaster service worker since May 22nd of this year. As many of you know, the virtual outreach team works with partner organizations and elected officials to design and produce high quality engagement events to communicate important information about COVID-19 and city resources. Now, it's with such pride that I welcome you to this event to celebrate community successes and the milestone of our 250th virtual outreach event. Great. And now for a few brief housekeeping items. Audio, video, and chat will be monitored and recorded today. By default, all participants will be muted and video is disabled. Video will be on for speakers only. To participate in the chat, please select the chat button at the bottom of your screen. And you can save lives and stop the spread of COVID-19 by getting tested for COVID-19. For more information about testing locations and eligibility, please visit sf.gov/gettestedsf, or you can also call 311. And we want to remind everyone to enjoy the Labor Day weekend coming up, but to do it in a way that keeps you and others safe. Remember to always wear a face covering and be sure to wear it properly. Have safe social gatherings by keeping at least 6 feet of distance, avoiding sharing food, drinks, and other common objects, and gathering outside whenever possible. And you can be the trusted messenger by discussing with your family and friends about how to gather safely. Now I would like to introduce our speakers who will tell us about what's happening in their fields and share some inspiring stories about their community building and life-saving work. First up will be our moderator, John Mcknight, who's currently the Outreach Branch Manager for the COVID Command Center. He brings more than a decade of experience working in disaster response and preparedness, and is also a proud Navy veteran. Next up will be someone who you all know, the dynamic Executive Director of the San Francisco Human Rights Commission, Cheryl Davis. Director Davis has been a champion for the marginalized and underserved for more than 20 years during her career as an educator, nonprofit administrator, legislative staffer, and city commissioner. Following her, among our cultural leaders will be Michael Pappas, the Executive Director of the San Francisco Interfaith Council. He coordinates the council's work on civil rights, homelessness, housing affordability, and disaster preparedness while amplifying the voice of San Francisco's city faith-based community on those important issues. We will then hear from Joshua Arce, the Director of Workforce Development for the Office of Economic and Workforce Development. He oversees a network of public, private, and nonprofit service providers and has been working tirelessly throughout the pandemic to support our businesses and workers. Then, one of the visible ways that the city is making a difference is through the Shared Spaces program, which is spearheaded by Robin Abad Okubio of the city's planning department. Mr. Abad Okubio has been working for over a decade in civic innovation and public space planning and policy, and has received international recognition for his leadership. Representing one of our strongest community partners will be Isabelle Flores, who is the Vice Chair of the San Francisco Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster, or SFOAD. And she also joins us from the San Francisco Marin Food Bank, where she supports more than 75 partner agencies that address food insecurity throughout the region. And then finally, I know you'll all want to stay on to hear from our closing speaker, Tathan Boyo, the Chief Operating Officer of Zuckerberg San Francisco General Hospital Trauma Center, and also the Deputy Commander of the city's COVID Command Center. COO Boyo is on a lifelong mission to advance equity and eliminate health disparities. We're incredibly honored and privileged to have him here with us today to close out our program. And now it's my pleasure to hand the floor over to John Mcknight.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. It was about 7 months ago when this COVID crisis began to really become an affront to our city, and we began to close our doors and put everybody inside. The community branch was started up within the Emergency Operations Center, and the community branch's mission is to ensure that communities across San Francisco have a voice in the operations of our city's activities in the response to disasters. And our traditional method of doing this, of going out into communities, listening to them, attending town halls, or convening people one-on-one, was stunted. We could not meet the people. Intermingling was challenged. We couldn't even bring our community partners into the building we were trying to meet, and we were challenged with how to meet the mission of this community branch under this disaster of isolation. And a small group of us came up with some idea of starting a technical team that would convene online meetings and bring our communities together through online platforms. This was new. No procedures existed, no protocols were in place, and I was very lucky to have been helped out by a number of key people. One sitting to the left of me here, Mr. Trey Allen from the Neighborhood Empowering Network, who is not being recognized here, but without him, I never could have launched this. And 3 of us started this event, and 3 of us turned into, over time, over 40 deployed disaster service workers who have built this platform up from the ground. These people come from a wide range of city agencies, from the city administrator, adult probation, the airport, Department of the Environment, the War Memorial, library, tax treasury, and rec and park. All of them have brought their talents to learning something new and to making these safe platforms and meetings available to everybody who wishes to participate in it. Of course, we're just a technical team. The real magic behind this are the community partners we've worked with, because it is through them that we've been able to reach into neighborhoods that we would not otherwise have access, so that we can listen and pass the word up through the commands of the needs of the people of San Francisco. And for that reason, we're here today to celebrate not just the 250th anniversary, but also the key partners we've worked with in this convening to ensure that we've met the needs of a community branch here in San Francisco during this disaster. And as we continue on as a partner now within the Joint Information Center, we continue to meet that mission by working with our partners to get the word out to neighborhoods about the upcoming health orders and more. I want to tell you that at this point, we have convened over 250 events, and that is what we're here to recognize today. 30 of these events have been convened by other agencies, and we have participated in partnership with over 9,200 participants. And that number just staggers me to even think about as I look back at all the meetings we've been with. I want to flip back to one slide real quick. If Aaron, you could bring that up. Thank you. Thank you, Jack. Some of the people we've met with, we've been able to work with youth teams throughout San Francisco, and we had the pleasure of working with one very young artist. Her name is Bonnie Tang. She's starting at the University of Seattle this year. Of course, she's going to be doing it from her room at home, but she volunteered to create this artwork, and she is a member of the Opportunities for All group, which is managed under our Human Rights Commission. They're a fantastic group of youth that have been working to put together programs to train youth for work in the real world. But thanks to Bonnie, we've been able to create some of this artwork, and I wanted to just let you know where this came from. This is the poster we're using for our citywide campaign to reach youth. In fact, her artwork is behind me right now. But with that said, I want to, of course, take time to introduce our key partners who have been working with us throughout these meetings. And it is my pleasure to first introduce one of my very good friends, Cheryl Davis, who I can't even recount how many meetings we've had together. I think we see each other morning, noon, and night pretty much every day now for months. And it's my great privilege to introduce Director Davis to you today.
Thank you so much, John. I just, tremendous gratitude to John Mcknight. When, as he mentioned, shelter in place started, there was a huge conversation around like, how are we going to engage with community? And folks who know me know I love poetry, and I think about a poem by Langston Hughes called Mother to Son. And in that poem, this mother is telling her son about, all these unknowns and climbing upstairs where there's no carpet and the floor is bare and there are nails sticking up, and she doesn't know which way she's going from one moment to the next and being in the dark. And I just think about this journey that we've been on with John and the team that he's put together, that from day one, when I said, community needs to hear and we want to do this, and can we leverage this platform? And John said, absolutely. We didn't know what it was going to be. We didn't know where it was going to go. We didn't know how it was going to happen. But just like that mother in the poem by Langston Hughes, he said, keep believing, keep fighting, keep doing it. We're going to make it happen. And in this process, we have hosted, over 46 events with John and his team and made amazing relationships. But I think what really touches me is the ability to engage with folks. And so they talked about sharing stories, and off the top, I just have to say, Amelia Martinez Bankhead has been a stalwart in this, like, just for us to be able to do this work. She works for the Human Rights Commission. She is probably with John and the JIC more than folks who are deployed to that. She is on a Zoom every week. We've done a Spanish language Zoom. We are doing the African-American faith-based. We're doing LGBTQ+. But that Amelia's commitment and passion knows no boundaries. Whenever someone says we need to do this, she says we're going to figure it out and we're going to do it. I also think about Ashley Murray, who I see on the call, who was deployed to us initially, and we wanted to do work with the African-American faith-based. And I remember after one of the calls, Ashley came back and said, that was the most inspirational, motivational place to be in partnership with community, but to hear people say, first and foremost, they felt heard, but that second, they felt responded to. And that is really what we've been able to do. Like, there's so many challenges that have happened as a part of this work, but so many people were experiencing injustice before the work. And this has allowed us to really hone in on some of those inequities that were exacerbated by the pandemic, and that we have been able to use this as an opportunity for folks to not only feel seen, to feel heard, but to feel responded to. That commitment to say this isn't just where people come and talk at you, but people come and talk with you, and we are focused on how we change what is happening in community. In that regard, I want to thank again the folks that work with the young people, that let them come in and share their images, their conversations. We learned so much, right, John, on that first call with some of the young people where they were talking to us about social media and the strategies and the ways to engage, and giving us terminology, some that was new for folks in terms of GroupMe or WhatsApp and all these other things, TikTok, and suggesting to us the ways to actually make an impact. But what I appreciate the most is that they were valued as equal partners. They felt like they were just as important as the policymakers at the table. I think another really meaningful exchange, and I just have heard so much about from folks, was the idea of the Thoughtful Thursdays that we've been able to do, that's focused on mental health, that's focused on addressing the challenges. And how many times folks have come out of that with tears and just a full heart, feeling like they are not in this alone, and that even though we were separated and not able to touch each other, that folks were feeling touched spiritually, that they felt like there was a connection and that there were people out there that cared for them and that were a part of that. And so as I, again, think about all the different things we've done, the Equity Studies Task Force, which led us to really, again, understanding the impact of COVID-19 on parents, on families, on young people. I look at Delia Fitzpatrick, who's on the call today, who really helped us think about even our early ed. And what are we doing? And it brought together in a way that I don't think would have been able to happen. Hundreds of people to think about how, if they don't have the ability to send their young people to school, what could they do to impact learning? And I think about our partners in the not virtual space, like James Bengola, who opened up when we were talking about needing to distribute PPE, and opened up Ella Hill Hutch Community Center, came on to these calls and talked about the resources and getting those to folks, our partners in the Latino Task Force. And so I leave you with, as I kind of close out and kick it back to John, like, again, this idea of being able to dream and stay hopeful in this process. And I think about the Langston Hughes poem, Dreams, which says, hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams go, life is a barren field frozen with snow. And so I just want to thank John and the team and Trey and all the folks who have made it possible for us, in light of all this kind of what would be darkness, to see the light, to be able to have hope, to continue to dream and believe that things can be better, and to realize that we're not in this alone. And really, you all have served for us to achieve that, and to continue dreaming and believe that we are going to come out of this better than we were before we went in. So thank you so much, John, and your team.
Thank you, Cheryl. Grateful to hear that. And of course, you're absolutely right. One of our original missions was to make sure that people knew they were not alone. If I look back on this, if I had to blame anybody for this all, the truth is, it last with Mr. Pappas, who is about to join us here. Back in February, when this was all very early on, I was sitting at home. I was working for Fleet Week, which was not likely to happen. And Michael called me, as I'm on his board, and said, John, I need you to go to the Emergency Operations Center to represent the Interfaith Council at the forming community branch. And that is really where this all started. I represented the Interfaith Council at the initial community branch. I eventually was then brought on by the city and hired on, but the story goes from there. The truth is, if Michael hadn't sent me this day, we wouldn't be sitting here. It's my great pleasure to introduce my friend, Mr. Michael Pappas, Executive Director for the San Francisco Interfaith Council, to share his stories.
John, and thank you for your leadership. John is humble. He is also the treasurer of our board, and he wears many hats and is so respected from throughout the city. I think about this day, and I think about 250 episodes, and it really, more than anything, is the celebration of a public-private partnership, more than anything. And I think about that in the context of the birth of the San Francisco Interfaith Council. You know, they say that San Francisco is accused sometimes of being one of the most irreligious cities in the United States, and yet few people know that the council was called into existence by city government. It was Mayor Art Agnos 31 years ago who saw an emerging homeless crisis and really sought the assistance of San Francisco's faith leaders to stem the tide of that crisis. And out of that was born an interfaith winter shelter. The following year, we had an earthquake, and once again, faith leaders emerged to help give relief to those who had been displaced. And it was through that that the council was born. Constituency-wise, we have 800 communities of faith and religious organizations, and they're not just the houses of worship, but they're also the faith-based social service agencies, the judicatories, the academic and healthcare institutions. So for over 3 decades, the San Francisco Interfaith Council has been bringing people of different faiths together to celebrate our rich diversity and to build understanding. And so when the pandemic happened and I was sitting in that first initial meeting at the EOC, I said, well, this is the moment I've been waiting for, because I knew that there was going to be some sort of crisis in San Francisco that the faith community was going to be asked to respond to. I thought it was going to be an earthquake, quite honestly. Someone said, if you want to make God laugh, tell God your plans. And so when I sat there, this was a whole different experience. And all of a sudden, we were joined at the hip with the city in conveying information initially. And we were at the outset very, very involved. We have 5,000 e-subscribers, and we were just pushing information out. official communications, aggressive recommendations, health orders, and then gaining clarity on all of that. And following that, we were harvesting best practices that congregations were putting in place and sharing that with one another. And then came this unique relationship with the community branch, which has changed and morphed into the COVID Command Center. And since early April, we have produced together with the Joint Information Center Virtual Outreach Team 24 online briefings for faith leaders. We've almost 1,400 attendees, and this I think accounts for about 10% of your programming. But in addition to that, for those who don't get up at the early hour of the morning, we've been sending the information out to our 5,000 e-subscribers. So over 100,000 people have been reached in this public-private partnership that we have been working together on. These weekly online briefings for faith leaders touch every sector known to that are impacted by the COVID-19. We've talked about everything from food insecurity to conducting Zoom calls with confidence. We've worked with the Economic Recovery Task Force, as well as Director Davis, and the very timely work of social justice and civil rights at this time. We feel very, very privileged to be in collaboration with the city on this project, and we're making a great commitment to it. I will tell you that early on, I was looking for some sort of guidepost to how the faith community should proceed, and I was Googling the Spanish flu of 100 years ago, and I found very little. But the one tribute I want to make to John and to the folk over at the COVID Command Center is that you are giving the next generation and whoever comes next really elements of what a success story is and how to do outreach and to how to help people to cope. Our faith community basically is cultivating community in the midst of isolation. And we will be navigating people back into connectivity at some point. But everything that we have done together has enabled our communities of faith to pivot very quickly to online services and virtual virtual ministry. I was asked to tell a story. The story is basically a tribute to the staff of the COVID Command Center, because after each one of our briefings, we have probably a 15-minute debrief. And it's interesting because the staff are not part of our usual constituency. And to hear their reflections on what they have just heard, for me is heartwarming. For me is really just a tribute of the greatness of San Francisco, how government officials can work with communities of faith to do good. And so that's my story, John.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it and grateful as always for your partnership. It's important for everyone to realize just how many people we're able to reach, but it's only because of these partnerships, and Michael has enabled us to reach this very wide faith-based community. I do want to do a quick shout out to the African American faith-based coalition that is represented here by Veronica Shepard. I know that she's on this call, and I want to recognize the tremendous work they've done to reach parishes of the churches in communities through the Western Addition, Bayview, Hunters Point, and we are grateful for their partnership as well. When we think about effects of COVID, it cannot be underestimated the incredible impact that has happened on the businesses and how that affects everyone here in the city. We could spend the rest of this conversation talking about the economic impact in the city is beyond enormous. And I can't even imagine the hard work that is tasked every day by the Office of Economic Workforce Development. We're working more and more in partnership with them to help them get the word out and try to change the landscape of the success of our businesses. We begin to move towards a reopening. So with that, I'm grateful to have here Director Joshua Arce to speak on their behalf. Director, please, welcome.
Thank you, John. And I have to say it's an honor to represent our department here today. Our incredibly hardworking department director, Joaquin Torres, the members of our staff. Marianne Thompson with our communication team is here on the Zoom, and many others. I just want to join in the celebration of the work of the COVID Command Center, John Mcknight and Trey Allen. I can speak not just for our division of the department workforce, but the number of events that Joaquin is leading us into with departments through this mechanism is so incredible. I have to say it's probably a large number. The 250 are there, whether it's small business openings with our small business team, invest in neighborhoods, or workforce. We became acquainted and familiar with Trey really through Daniel Holmesy, who's doing work there too. And we were in a pinch trying to run a workforce investment board meeting, which is a federally required convening of our oversight body, business, labor, community, government leaders. And we didn't know what to do, and y'all saved us. So we really appreciate that. We've done many meetings since together on that workforce board. I want to tell a couple stories, I think, that are emblematic of the work together and those hardworking essential workers. But first of all, like Director Davis, I too like poetry. I like sonnets, and I'm going to sing a sonnet, just not today. All kidding aside, the fact is it's been essential to reach those resources, the workers and the businesses who are really feeling the pains of the very essential public health safeguards that Mayor Breed so boldly put into place so early. Critical, absolutely critical to keep us safe. You see that now with the fact that San Francisco is among the lowest COVID cases per 100,000 residents in the nation. That wouldn't have happened but for that bold leadership. And the work now to survive and to make it through these economic consequences to workers and businesses is really how we're going to emerge even stronger, as the mayor said when she kicked off the Economic Recovery Task Force. So those resources are available through those webinars that we do together. But my story, my shout out is around how that work is communicated back through the front lines of our office, at the Office of Economic and Workforce Development, in partnership with the Human Services Agency, because your tool allows us to then promote through our social media, our comms teams, to get the word out. The most effective thing that we found to get the word out and connect to those workers and businesses, not just with our programs and all the different resources available at www.oewd.org, are the fact that we have a workforce hotline that refers individuals to this 250th webinar and all these other resources. Those men and women joined together in the aftermath of the immediate shelter in place. When our offices decamped, we had just enough time. I ran over to Metro PCS and got a burner phone, and we forwarded one of our phone numbers at our office to that phone. And that was our lifeline to connect with those workers and in time those businesses, to the tune that I'm gonna try something here that may have never been done before, an emerging of technologies, because the individuals that I wanna thank, that I wanna highlight, are those OEWD and Human Services Agency staff who've taken on this assignment to answer these phone calls, to answer from workers, from businesses, 8,050 phone calls over the past several months. I'm gonna go ahead and log into the hotline chat where those men and women are working right now answering those phone calls. I'm in the chat in Microsoft Teams. Y'all have your cameras on? Everybody's cameras on? All right, I'm going to share my screen and ask that we give a big thanks and gratitude to the men and women coordinated by Chad Houston out of our office with Human Services Agency, Economic and Workforce Department staff. I'm sharing Microsoft Teams in the Zoom chat. Did that work? Can you see everybody?
Yes, it did.
Big round of applause for everything that you've done today. Chad Houston, Roxana Morales, Chris Reyes, Guy Soto, Bart Ellison, running amazing work and coordinating with us, our partner at HSA and his work, Ken Nim, our City Bill Director, Mark Hoganes, the fearless, relentless Tammy Bryant in there. And we've got Jeanette Lasso, thank you, others, Roxy Hardiman and so many, Larry Chu, Gil Deanda, you've answered, what's the number, Chad? 8,050 calls. And that's a lot of calls. And there's no end in sight, because we know that there is an end in sight. But for these individuals, they're not looking to the end, they're looking to today. And we know we're going to get there even stronger. We know we're going to get those resources, pointing to the resources thanks to the COVID Command Center. But the work is being done by these men and women on the ground. Thank you so much for everything you do, everyone on the San Francisco Workforce Hotline.
Thank you, Director Essay, and I
Thank
appreciate
you.
your comments on this. Let me also just take a moment to quickly shout out to Marianne Thompson, who's on this call, also from the Office of Economic Workforce Development. She meets with me every morning at 7:30 a.m. along with Johnny Malakar from the Department of Public Health. And since March, the three of us have talked every day to ensure that our departments are working in sync. Grateful for their partnership, grateful for OEWD's work. It's a huge task, and we're lucky to have all of you as partners. We believe that Robin Abad, his technology has failed him. Sadly, we are going to miss him today. The Shared Spaces program, of course, is something that is growing as we begin to look towards more reopening, more and more. This is a very powerful program. It's enabled our city to move in leaps and bounds beyond anything we would have thought possible before, opening up sidewalk spaces and other opportunities that give businesses a chance to survive despite this tremendous impact of not being able to meet indoors. Grateful for the program, Robin, and we wish you the best. Our next speaker I have known for a little while. In fact, if there was ever a large significant fire in San Francisco, standing on some smoke-filled corner would be myself, Isabelle Flores, and our good friend Ben Ames. And the three of us were an inseparable triangle of people as Isabelle was managing the Red Cross's disaster management at the time. Ben Ames would manage the housing, and I was with the Salvation Army. And the three of us opened up shelters. We put people in homes. And the years I've known Isabelle have been amazing because we've been able to make a difference. And I love working with people that make a difference. That's why I'm so grateful to be on the call with all of you. Isabelle and I have many stories. She helped me create the volunteer organizations Active in Disaster and is now currently the co-chair, having succeeded me after I stepped down. Grateful to have Isabelle on this call. And with that, I turn it over to Isabelle Flores, who is also with the Marin San Francisco Food Bank, who's been doing amazing work in this pandemic since early February. Isabelle.
Thank you, John. You're too kind. We indeed have shared a very long and very fruitful and productive partnership, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm very honored to be here today representing SFVOAT, the voluntary organizations active in disaster. Thank you for having us here today. We're a coalition of nonprofits and faith-based organizations in San Francisco that work together to build better cooperation in times of disaster, and we work closely in partnership with local government agencies. We operate under the umbrella of the National VOAD and are guided by the core principles of the 4 C's: cooperation, communication, coordination, and collaboration. Everything the VOAD does is a team effort. We are all volunteers here coming together. It's nobody can do this work alone, and folks are all volunteers just trying to work together so we can better serve our San Francisco residents. Over the past 6 months, we've worked closely with first the EOC and now the CCC. We've deployed physical and virtual liaisons to both. We have shared a lot of regular communications and updates and information with all of our members. These include over 100 individuals and about 70 different nonprofit and faith-based agencies. We created a community resource request form for folks to be able to put in both their needed resources and also resources that they could share with the community. In partnership with the Joint Information Center, we've hosted several informational webinars, including on topics of mental health and wellness, long-term recovery, racial equity, and disaster response. A year ago, we launched a new website, and we've tried really hard to keep it up to date during the pandemic. We created a particular page dedicated to COVID-19 resources, as well as have been posting all of the information we receive from the CCC on the newsfeed. We've also helped provide nonprofits with resources and in particular PPE. And the story we wanted to share today is about, we dubbed it the Great Mask Giveaway, and I'd actually like to invite one of our member partners, Nico's, to present. So we have Michael Liao, Director of Programs, and Tony Zhang, Administrative Assistant and Program Assistant for Nico's, who actually spearheaded this Great Mask Giveaway on behalf of the VOAD. And I'd like Tony to take it away if possible.
Hello everyone. This is Tony from Nico's Chinese Health Coalition. Could I have permission to share screen?
Just a second.
Okay. Can everyone see the PowerPoint slide?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. So a little bit of context. Through SFO, we at Nico's were able to receive a large donation of cotton masks from FEMA, and we volunteered as coordinators to get these masks to the hands of nonprofit organizations. So what is Nico's? Nico's is an acronym for Northeast Medical Service, IPA, Chinese Hospital, Unlock Lifeways, and Self-Help for the Elderly. We were founded in 1985, located in SF, and are a public-private community partnership of 30 plus groups. So through the FEMA donationship, we were able to distribute a total of 300,000 masks. These masks were distributed across 10 counties, including San Francisco, Alameda, Contra Costa, San Mateo, Santa Clara, Marin, Solano, Sonoma, Napa, and Madera. They are shown on the left side, aside from Madera, which is further to the right of Santa Clara. Out of these 300 masks, 82% went to San Francisco, with the other 18% distributed to other counties. In total, 173 nonprofit organizations throughout the Bay Area received the mask. 13 of these organizations were distributors who volunteered to store the mask and allow other orgs to pick up the mask from their site. Over 15 volunteers from different organizations went to UCSF to ensure that the organizations received the mask. Most organizations that received the mask are from San Francisco, but we were also able to get these 26% of these masks to organizations outside of SF. Here's some photos and quotes from those who pick up the mask from UCSF. James Tomlinson said, "Y'all's teams was amazing. We got through the SF traffic from Marin like a breeze and arrived early. We were willing to wait, but everyone said, come on in. They loaded our truck so fast and with so much laughter and kind words. We were yelling back our thank yous and hugs." Here's another quote from Johanna. "It was a wonderful opportunity, and we are very appreciative to all of the volunteers who made this process go so smooth. The coordination was excellent." From Heather Haggett, "Hello, I just received the delivery of masks. We are so very thankful." And finally, from Leandro, who leaded the volunteers at UCSF. "That was fun. Thank you all for doing amazing things for the community. We will get through this together. Thank you, volunteers and coordinators, for working extremely hard." Here are the organizations who contributed and made this possible. Thank you to FEMA for donating the mask, UCSF for storing the mask, and everyone that helped to distribute the mask. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Isabelle, is that all you've got? You know, Isabelle has some great stories around volunteer or donations management. Not all of them I'll share here on this call, but one of the great things she's had to manage is when those masks came in, a couple 100,000 or something with them, where to store them, how to get them, how to move them, how to pick them up. And if you think it's easy, try it sometime. They've done some amazing work with the VOAD in managing items that were really important to the community. And this small team of really 3 to 4 people with no resources other than their normal and managing day jobs involved with the feeding of people during a pandemic. And they still managed to pull this off. A huge shout out to Isabelle Flores and the people that are managing our VOAD here. Grateful for all your work. Isabelle, is there anything you'd want to add before we move on?
Just to thank you, but also I just want to, as I said before, it's a huge team effort. And while there are a few of us leading the executive committee of the SF VOAD, we can't do it without the rest of the committee and the rest of the members, such as Nico's and UCSF, who stepped up to really help facilitate things like this great mask giveaway. We've done non-sterile gowns as well, and a few other items. So it's a huge team effort, and it's wonderful to see the community and the nonprofits and faith-based organizations all come out to support each other and work together to better meet, the rest of our community members together.
Thank you, Isabelle. In those early days when we stood up the community branch, Isabelle was one of the people sitting at the table with me as we were beginning to conceive of what to do. Though as the needs of feeding around San Francisco just went through the roof, her and her co-chair, Meredith Terrell, who is with Meals on Wheels, they have been unbelievably busy. And the fact they can pull all this off is just, was a testament to their character. So big gratitude to Isabelle and all the people there from the VOAD. Our next speaker, Tosam Boyo, is the Chief Operating Officer of Zuckerberg Medical Center, a job I can't even begin to wrap my brains around. One of the most amazing facilities we have here in San Francisco. And of course, the work here in this pandemic is beyond my scope to even conceive of what it must be to work in a place that is receiving truly the front end of this pandemic. Grateful to have you here, Tassan. I would love to hear your comments and appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Tassan, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's been the privilege of my career to be serving the city and county of San Francisco during this trying time, and I'm very grateful for having me at this event. So in my regular life, I am the Chief Operating Officer of San Francisco General Hospital, and in February, I was asked to step beyond my role to come to, at this point in time, was the Department Operations Center, representing DPH in a command center. And I've been here for 6 months. I thought it was going to be a 2-week assignment, and it's been 6 months, and I am tremendously grateful for it. A key thing I'll talk about is in the past 6 months, it's been inspiring to me working with so many different parts of the city, a lot of areas that I had very little insight to, and just really understanding what it looks like when the power of the city and county of San Francisco is being harnessed to fight this disease. I remember what it was like when the cruise ship first arrived. You guys remember that? It seemed like a lifetime ago. No one knew what to do. Information was all over the place. And yet the city and county of San Francisco rallied. We addressed the issue. I remember what it was like when PPE was in very short supply. A lot of our relationships with different vendors were falling through the cracks. It was just challenging to secure all the PPE we needed. And yet again, the city and county of San Francisco rallied, and we came through. PPE was addressed for the city. I remember what it was like when the first surge started happening, and my family is in the East Coast. I was born and raised in Nigeria, but my family is in New York and New Jersey. And seeing what my brother and my mother were going through in the East Coast was terrifying. And also realizing that that could be San Francisco, and doing everything we could between the Human Services Agency, the Department of Emergency Management, the librarians that showed up, the Park and Recs Department, Department of Public Health. Again, the city and county of San Francisco rallied and were able to defeat the first surge. Again, and not thinking about when the second surge arrived very recently, and we had to slow down how we're reopening society, and there was a lot of concern that we would be on a precipice again. and the city and county of San Francisco rallied, and we defeated the second surge. So it's been humbling. I am extraordinarily proud of the team that we have here. I do not take for granted the privilege it is to lead the different agencies in this department, ranging from support services with MTA to human services to DPH. A key theme that has come to my attention over and over and over again is we have truly talented people that place the community, that place patients, that place clients above all else. And there is no place in the United States of America I would rather have served on the front lines of this pandemic with. So I just wanted to share a couple of numbers to let you know how successful we've been. I know that there are a lot of challenges ahead of us. I know that the past 6 months have been very traumatic for everyone, but I want to let you know the impact we've been having. Since COVID started, we've done over 394,000 tests across the city and county of San Francisco. And as of today, we are doing 4.4 tests per 1,000 people, which is the largest testing in any city, county, or state in the union. That is how effective San Francisco is being. San Francisco, compared to any other densely populated city in the United States of America, also has the lowest death rates. Again, the amount of work that is taking place across the departments right now is extraordinarily powerful. Since the pandemic hit, we have put over 2,000 people through isolation and quarantine. We've stood up over 33 different sites, testing sites across the city. And our disaster service workers, ranging from first responders to people in planning, to health workers, to porters and janitors, to engineers, we will not be where we are today without all these folks, right, who have been a part of this work, and I'm tremendously grateful. And when we think about where we were before with how much PPE we didn't have, 100% of every single COVID PPE that we would need, we have over 90 days supply for across the city and county of San Francisco. So it's been the privilege of my career. I'm really proud of everything we've achieved, and I know we have a lot more work to do. Equity is a significant passion of mine. I lead the Equity Initiative at San Francisco General, and we can do better in that area. We will do better in that area. And considering the patterns that we've seen thus far, I do believe that we will come even stronger on the other side. When I think about a story, I was reflecting on what it was like to be leading the COVID Command Center during the social unrest driven by the deaths of Brianna, Ahmaud, and George, and how it really gave us an opportunity to reflect on who we are as a city and where we stand in the country. And I remember how challenging it was for me to come in every day, but in the command center, everyone understood how challenging it was, and everyone stood together about how this was not okay. And I remember going back to San Francisco General, and essentially most people in a hospital coming out to leave their posts to take a knee in solidarity. So I've seen the best the city has to offer, and it's been a humbling experience. I am grateful to be able to serve with each of you, and this is one I will never forget. I want you to know that the people who are the front lines in the COVID Command Center and in San Francisco General Hospital, and don't forget, we also have the largest skilled nursing facility in the country, Laguna Honda. And if you think about how terrifying that was, so over 40% of the deaths due to COVID have been taking place in skilled nursing facilities. And Laguna Honda, the largest in the country, came out on the other side. We actually do what's called universal testing, where every single person in that facility, from frontline staff to leaders to patients, get tested, and they're on their 8th round. And the fact that your facility, the largest in the country, the skilled nursing facility, is doing extraordinarily well, you should be really proud. The only trauma center in the entire region is doing extraordinarily well. This week we had a moment where we had no single COVID patient in ICU. So we're making a lot of progress. And now the next the next horizon is going to be safely reopening schools, and that's going to be a powerful thing for us to do, because by reopening schools. We are also going to be advancing equity to make sure that kids who depend on schools for meals, who depend on schools for social infrastructure, continue to have that and do not get left behind due to the virus. So all in all, I'm extraordinarily grateful to have been of service to the city, and it's been a truly rewarding experience. So thank you for having me, and thank you for continuing to support the COVID Command Center.
Thank you, Tosan, for those words, and thank you for reminding me about the work at Laguna Honda. And there was that heart-stopping moment when we realized that COVID had broken out there, and the fact you got that under control. There's a white paper in there that's going to earn someone a master's thesis, because that's powerful stuff. And I read about the outbreaks that happen in the veterans' homes and how many veterans' homes have been ravaged by this, and those cherished members of our community we've lost in this time. To see you win there, well done, bravo, and bravo to all the frontline workers.
It's the team, and thank you so much for all your support. None of this work would really mean anything if we didn't have a thread line to the community, and if the community didn't believe that we're placing their interests at heart, at the center of everything we're doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And speaking of community and our essential businesses, which is every business in San Francisco, and the need for them to be up and running to take care of those members of our community that both live by their businesses, that bring that essential part of our city to life. Our businesses are the core of some of our greatest culture, and the creative thinking around how to keep those businesses active right now is the heart of what the Shared Spaces is all about. And right now, the director of the Shared Spaces, Robin Avad, is here to talk about the program and share some stories of how we've been able to enable him to succeed in his mission. Robin, great to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for having me. And wow, that was just such an inspiring, presentation from Chief Boyo. I echo the sentiments that he, elaborated on in terms of being really proud of our city and our state, our community. San Francisco and California is really showing up in this public health and social and economic crisis in really inspiring ways. So, and it's wonderful to be part of this city family making this happen. So I think I prepared a few slides to just share a little bit about what we're doing and what we're excited and proud about. So talking about Shared Spaces Heroes, second slide 2, please. So for folks, I'm sure folks who are here are aware that the Shared Spaces was created by Mayor London Breed and the Economic Recovery Task Force to help as many of our local merchants, as many of our locally owned businesses, which really are the life and the lifeblood and the heart and soul of our commercial districts and our neighborhoods, get back up and running, get them back earning their livelihoods to support themselves and their families and the families of their employees, as well as continue serving their communities, of course, outside, since indoor activities, especially commercial ones, are inadvisable given the public health crisis. Next slide, please. So this happens in all kinds of places. We have merchants, our heroes, our Shared Spaces heroes, activating sidewalks, the parking lane or curbside lanes. Often merchant associations will close down entire streets for portions of the weekend to allow this activity to occur. Next slide, please. So this is everything from a temporary white zone and yellow zone curbs for contactless pickup and drop off of things like groceries and medications, other essential goods. Of course, retail, physically distance queuing or waiting in line to enter essential services and those kinds of establishments. I think probably most noticeably outdoor dining, and then now personal services such as barbers and estheticians. Next slide, please. So huge shout out, because this is about heroes, both in the public sector as well as the private sector, to our crew at Digital Services here in San Francisco, headed up by Carrie Bishop, her team, Becca Otto, as well as Brian Lee, who've put together this really easy to navigate front-end application portal for everyone. And so folks who are interested, please check out sf.gov/shared spaces to see, to get all those resources for how to apply. Next slide, please. So we've got shared spaces heroes all over San Francisco, in every neighborhood, you know, with every sort of demographic and community background. The program has been really widely embraced, and merchants groups and small businesses are really showing their leadership and their resilience in this time, also through accessing this program in order to continue serving their neighborhoods. So here's a quick map of snapshot of where things are currently happening in San Francisco in terms of shared spaces. Next slide, please. If folks are interested, you can go to a public tracker at sf.gov/shared-spaces-tracker to see where this is all happening. You can actually zoom into this interactive map, click on all of those dots, and get a sense of who's actually sponsoring these shared spaces and going the extra mile in order to continue providing services and retail to their communities. Next slide, please. All right, so let's get into some heroes. There's so much leadership being exhibited across the private and nonprofit sectors, and we really want to call out a few of them. One is the Chinatown Merchants Association, who's closed Grant Street for 3 blocks in Chinatown for Chinatown merchants and restaurant operators, retailers, you know, produce markets to be able to continue operating safely outdoors. So please check out the Grant Street closure at the Chinatown, in Chinatown on Saturdays and Sundays from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., sponsored by or organized by the nonprofit Livable City. Next slide, please. So we've got big projects, and then we've got little intimate spaces too. So just a shout out to Underdog's Taco Shop on Irving between 19th and 20th. This is their kind of really no frills, but quite cozy shared space. It's a dining area outside the taco shop. Notably, the folks at Underdogs and their neighbors have been leading a community effort along with Supervisor Marr's office to actually close more of Irving Street all of Irving Street between 19th and 20th to allow for a larger group operated shared space for all of the merchants in the vicinity. So shout out to Underdogs. Next slide, please. Another kind of very simple, no frills shared space, but one that has a lot of characters, Panchita's Pupuseria in the Mission District. So this is a wonderful example of how, you know, all types of businesses, whether you're, you know, a new restaurant or a neighborhood institution like Panchita's, which is, you know, run by an immigrant family and has been here for decades, can bring your services out into the public realm. Next slide, please. Also want to call out another neighborhood group, the Valencia Corridor Merchants Association, headed up by Jonah Bufa and Commissioner of Small Business, Manny Cutiel, amongst others. Valencia is closed between 16th and 17th and 18th and 19th, Thursday through Sunday from 5 to 10 p.m. And this is one of the first big road closure projects for shared spaces out the gate. And the Valencia Corridor Merchants Association was really kind of a guinea pig. You know, they were a real partner in trying to help figure out how we could make a larger group operated shared space like this possible. So they helped the city figure out a lot of the key kind of methods and also identify issues for the city to streamline so that future shared spaces applicants would have an easier time of it. So big shout out to the Valencia Corridor Merchants Association for their leadership, not only in the Mission, Castro, but citywide. Another really wonderful example is Wild Hawk on 19th Street, another smaller establishment. Next slide, please. As well as Teeth on Mission Street. So, you know, we're seeing a lot of our, a lot of cultural districts, you know, a lot of opportunity neighborhoods really come forward with this as well. So not pictured here. And I want to apologize in advance to April Spears out in the Bayview for not picturing you all. I couldn't get a good picture because my internet connectivity has been so patchy.
Hey, Robin, I'm deeply sorry, my friend. We're down to about a minute left. So
okay.
in fact, we're out of time. So shoot me your next slide, and but these are great examples of where we're
Yeah.
succeeding.
Okay, it's the second to last slide, please. Just want to call out the city staff team.
Got you there, Robin. Well, it looks like he froze. So let me just say thank you so much. The great work of your group has made a difference in our city. And because it is 12 noon and I want to make sure we close on time, I'm going to just quickly take a chance to thank all of you for joining us. I want to thank our speakers, Director Michael Pappas, Director Cheryl Davis, Director Joshua Arce. Robin, thank you so much for being here. Isabelle Flores, my ever lively partner out on the streets, and of course, Tassan Boyo, Chief Operating Officer from Zuckerberg. It is through these partnerships we're able to make a difference in the city. Please, if there are other agencies or groups you can imagine us working with, send us an email. If you need our help to convene groups to talk about the effects of COVID or how we can better your community, let us know. And let me just throw up our last slide. We are slowly seeing the reopening again. We saw this back in June and it all went back in the bottle because of our numbers going up. Our numbers are in beautiful shape. The county has come off the watch list. As we step into the Labor Day weekend, I want everyone to please remember that we're treading on thin ice. Please, please practice safe COVID behavior through this weekend. We ask you to be careful. Share space with as few people as possible. Wear a mask. Give yourself 6-foot distance and be aware that it's our mission to keep our numbers low throughout the city so that we continue in this progress towards reopening for our businesses, for our frontline workers, for ourselves, and for our community. Please take care this weekend. I thank you all for being here. Grateful for everyone taking the time. Have a wonderful Labor Day weekend, and we look forward to seeing you all on our next convening. Have a wonderful day.